Sleight of Mouth was initially a language technology developed by Robert Dilts after modeling some of the greatest communicators of all time. Later it has been popularized by Doug O'Brien and also slightly Michael Hall, and the initial model was very interesting but also quite dry and difficult to understand for somebody who does not have a background into NLP or linguistics. However, when I started using that model to do some breakdowns on YouTube of good communicators and showing how this model could explain exactly what is happening every time somebody heals another person in a therapy session, or when two individuals are in conflict, and how this model is being used for persuasion, I noticed those breakdowns were extremely well received by my audience and people wanted to learn more about it. On top of that, or aside from that, my initial interest in Sleight of Mouth was counterintuitive, to say the least, because initially I thought it was interesting, but I didn't really think it was that much of a big deal to master Sleight of Mouth. However, it was used on me years ago, just before I launched my actual business and this channel, and before that I didn't think of myself as capable of launching my own business. The conversation where Sleight of Mouth was used on me is in big part the conversation that allowed me to succeed in life. That conversation is contained in the chapter 6 of my new book called Magical Linguistics, because it is the topic of this video. It is how did I transition from Sleight of Mouth to the creation of my own model called Magical Linguistics, and what did I want to accomplish with this specifically. The goal for me was to simplify, first of all, because the main criticism I heard from people learning Sleight of Mouth is too many patterns, too complicated, way too much to learn, I don't know where to start. So I wanted to simplify to as few categories as possible to understand and make my own model more fluid, more practical than the original one. Because in the original Sleight of Mouth version by Robert Dilts in his book, many of the chapters were not even persuasion or using language. It was about deeper psychological processes that can be used in coaching by a professional. So we are going to dive into the basic methodology I have come up with to simplify this whole model, and how can that help you use it anytime you want to help somebody else deal with some mental limitations, or even handle the frame in a confronting environment. And then we are going to discuss the model one step at a time to show how one limiting belief can be reframed by each of those categories easily. The first big principle to realize is I am not here to find a solution, I am here to fish for a resource. The fishing analogy is a great one I keep appealing to, because if you stop trying to think that you have to say the right thing to this person right away and putting loads of pressure on your head because you think too much about what to say next, if instead of that you see that as a continuous process of throwing another hook and noticing does this one catch a fish or not? If not, fine, just find another, send another one, throw another one into another side of the river being the mind of the person you are interacting with. You just throw another hook to a different part of the river and notice what happens. From that standpoint, you never really lose the interaction, you never really fail in this interaction, because you're not trying to find a solution right away. The second one, I do not need to know which resource they will use. So whatever I say during the therapy session, I don't really care which of my phrases worked the most or which of my reframes worked the most on their mind. I will just keep proposing new reframes and let them elaborate on themselves, elaborate by themselves, even maybe after the session, what was the most useful for them. Therefore, number 3, my sole intent here is to be patient enough to let them find it. I don't care about crushing their limiting belief, destroying their limitation. No. I just patiently elaborate on new ideas to reframe their belief until they find into their own head a resource by themselves. And number 4, the resource they end up mentioning during the session for, oh, I know I need to do this, that might not even be the resource they will end up using to get better. Maybe they're gonna say during the session that, oh, now they have the answer. They need to change their life by doing this. And maybe in the upcoming weeks, they will not even do the thing they said they would do, but they will do something else that was unlocked in their mind because of the reframing session. So as a conclusion to all of those, number 5, all they need to get better is the presupposition that they can. So my only outcome is to enhance or develop or trigger the thought into their head that yes, they are going to get better. Whatever happens to them, yes, they will find a way to get better. Because if I can enhance that idea and grow it inside their head, then all the resources they need to change their limitations, to heal their trauma, whatever, they will find that by themselves during the days or weeks after the session. And let's clarify all of that with a simple example, with one belief. For example, I was not good in school, which means I can't succeed in life. So before you get to this form of belief, you will maybe go through some questioning initially at the beginning of a session, because maybe the person, the client, is telling you that their life is not going to go well, that they are just failing at everything they do, they're just a failure. And when you elaborate, you notice that belief in their mind formed with the premise, the evidence that because they were not good in school, then they can't succeed in life. And you will find many beliefs like that in everybody's head. Some people do the same with losing weight. Because I was a fat pig when I was a child, I can't lose weight today. You will find many beliefs like this. On this one, for example, the beginning of that model, where this model starts, is by challenging directly the cause and effect. So how can this mean that, coming from the NLP meta model? And how, for example, how can school be a good indication of what is valuable in one's life? How can school be an indication of anything? How can you know that those events that happened in school are a relevant proof of what you can or can't accomplish today? This one in my book is the basis of chapter 1, and that is already a big rhetorical analysis of how beliefs work and how can you change beliefs even without trying to change them, because you just point out to the logical fallacies that happen in somebody's head. Then we drift in the original intent, which is very similar to the one in Deal's model about the intent pattern. Basically, you comment on something that happened before, prior to this belief becoming true, or one earlier evidence, historical or even just in the story of that life, that person's life, that happened before, that should justify that their belief is true. For example, did you even try to succeed in school? Because maybe it was not even that you failed in school, maybe it is just that you didn't even like going there and you didn't even want to succeed in school, for example. And you may find different ways of reframing the intent of the person depending on what their story is. The point again is to use as many of those patterns at the same time, or like in a sequence, and notice which one is catching a fish. Maybe the intent doesn't provoke any reaction. Fine, you drift to the next one. And the next one here is the meta frame. By which rules, for example, do we define school to be a good indicator of anything? How do we know school rules the way you should see your life? And how do we know the people who told you anything in school could have any sort of authority to tell anybody what they should or should not do with their life? That is the superior authority by which you comment on what is happening in the situation. On a more direct reframe, you might comment on what is happening between you and me right now as we interact. The next one, alternative map. This one is more on the value system. If you have read anything into NLP about value elicitation, how to define which values are more important and relevant for somebody, for a client in coaching. This time, what is more important than succeeding in life? Maybe in their criteria, in their value judgment, they see themselves as a failure because their entire model of the world is centered on financial success, for example. Then, okay, what can be even more important than financial success? And in that case, or career success. And in that case, we are going to establish the hierarchy of what can be even more relevant. Maybe the life of your children is even more relevant than your financial success. And of course, you do need a bit of finances to feed your children. But beyond that, do you even need to climb the corporate ladder? That could be a great reframe for many people who are stuck in the hustle culture of always working too much. And in this one, you are basically clarifying their map of the world. Then the alternative views is going side by side. It is going hand in hand with the alternative map, because once you have clarified which beliefs were forming their value judgment, what is more important in life, what is more relevant in life, then you can have some linguistic twist to make them reflect differently about what they thought they were limited by. You find some of those formula in my book, obviously. I really wanted to make the simplest formula possible for anyone to use right away. Right now, this one is, aside from success, there is fulfillment. So fulfillment is just one thing I thought about. Maybe in that person's map of the world, it will have to be something else. I am proposing an idea, an alternative choice to what they have been doing so far. So based on your belief that because you were not good in school, you can't succeed in life, what if, for example, aside from success, there was actual fulfillment in life that was even more important? Or maybe not even more important, but just equally important. What if there was something else that was equally important that you might engage in other than the thing you have struggled with for years and years and years with no result? Then resulting outcome, talking about anything in the future that will happen as a consequence, as a related or even sometimes unrelated consequence of the belief coming in the middle. If the person says that, what will be a future outcome, a future consequence resulting outcome, resulting from what they say at this particular moment. For example, let's say you get successful. Indeed, everything you have dreamed of, it is happening right now, or it has already happened. Then what? Then what's happening next? Because you are struggling endlessly to succeed at something. Let's say you have already succeeded. Then what happens next? And if the answer is a blank, the person getting confused and doesn't know what to reply to this, then maybe we have found out the thing he or she was complaining about was not even the real matter they needed to fix. Whenever on that model where you stumble upon a blank, the person doesn't know how to answer, okay, now you have unveiled the limit of their limiting belief, because their limiting belief can't stand up to there. At this moment, you know their mind becomes open to change, and you can condition them much more easily with any therapeutic procedure, with any visualization, with any basic suggestion. They will take it in their unconscious mind because the path is open once they get confused about their limitation. Then specifics, obviously chunking down. Anyone who has studied the basic NLP course knows about this one. How do you know what success is, or how do you define success? What definition do you attribute to this or that? If you say you are a failure, okay, what does failing means? So anybody who is not good at school is a failure, but we can also find billionaires who were not good in school, so that doesn't make any logical sense. What is your definition, and how can that definition enter in contradiction with the thing you said you were limited by? Then analogies. I know this one is more complicated with some people because they may be heavily left brain oriented, and analogies or metaphors, hypnotic ones, require to let go a little bit of the left brain critical, logical, conscious thinking and go more toward the realm of parallel thinking, meaning what is it similar to? What is similar to this in another context, for example? Or who else another person, as an analogy, who else is a mirror of that situation. You might simply quote the words of somebody else. Maybe you yourself knew somebody else in your life who in the same way was not good at school, and despite that they succeeded. So if your friend, for example, was not good at school and succeeded, then what is the limitation of that person? Because that person doesn't make any sense anymore. If there is at least one counterexample, then this belief doesn't stand anymore because it is not logical anymore. It is not true anymore. And the person will have to justify, well, for me it is different because. Yes, for you it is different because what is the deeper belief below that? There is something else below that that is maybe less conscious and that the person has trouble articulating, which is why they come to a therapy session. And for example, in this one, can a bird fly without learning to fly? So when birds come to life, they can't fly right away. Their wings need to develop, and they have to learn some skill set before they can perfectly fly without any interruption. We can find many other examples in nature of where the principle governing this belief cannot be verified or true. We just want to induce confusion about the belief so that the person, again, opens by themselves another resource to reevaluate their belief. I cannot know, or it would be very difficult to know exactly how to reframe this belief right away in the head of that person, but I can keep proposing new options, new alternatives, until one of them, for whatever reason, is catching a fish, clicks a dot, clicks a link, associate a new link, and that person reflects on themselves differently. And finally, on the pattern interrupt. A pattern interrupt to me in a conversation will happen many times as an indirect result of all the other patterns. Maybe you just say one of those things, any of the other ones, and the person gets shocked and doesn't know what to reply. That causes an interruption. That might happen when they get confused, whatever you say. Now, if we want to induce a shock on purpose, even if none of those phrases caused any confusion, and you notice that the client or the patient keeps arguing about the same thing and looping in circles and keeps bringing back the same topic again and again and again, at some point, maybe you may realize they are just covering the real black spot, the real blind spot, with a ton of fluff that is just irrelevant. In that case, you may interrupt them if they start looping in circles by saying something kind of brutal, like, "Stop saying stupid shit like that." Or you might even quote somebody else. You might even say, "You know, my hypnosis teacher, whenever I was complaining about something, he told me, 'You just shut the fuck up.'" And you stop there. And if you said that through a quote, you didn't say it directly to the person in front of you. You said that through a quote, but the fact of saying that with the right intonation will be like an interruption because it is uncommon, unconventional, and impolite. Therefore, their trail of thoughts may be paused, may be calmed down, and from there, maybe you're going to have access to a much deeper part of their unconscious mind, the one that is not covered with tons and tons and tons of defense mechanisms to explain to you why it is impossible for them to change. Once we get rid of all of that, which deeper belief do we have access to? And how can that deeper belief be changed? That will obviously be a matter of practicing. I'm not promising you can master that in just one day. You will have to practice with a few of those language patterns one at a time. I am also preparing a course to give you exercises one day at a time to really fortify and develop those skills. In the meantime, before that, you can already get the book that is available with the link down below, Magical Linguistics. All of those categories will be explained in much better details. You will have many conversations broken down from start to finish. So it is not only direct reframes, one phrase like this at a time. It is definitely an entire conversation where you see where the client started from, what happened in the beginning in their beliefs, and where did they arrive at, how did they get there, and how their beliefs were reframed in a non-confrontational way. So you have this book down below, you can take it right away or in a few days if you prefer, and I hope this was enjoyable for you. I will see you soon in the next video. Thank you.